Adams. I'm part of the senior product team at VMware. I'm out of the Palo Alto office and wanted to take some time with you today to talk about vSphere 5.5, which went GA at the end of September and is available right now for download either through eval or through your subscription process, so feel free to go grab it after we're done chatting. You will get a copy of today's presentation along with all the materials from VMworld in about 2 weeks. They usually have it available. We are recording today both the audio and video, so at the end when we take questions, and I take questions at the end because there's a lot of material to get through, just remember to speak into the microphone or I need to repeat the question. Also, I don't mind a direct email interaction. Don't laugh, that is my true email address, madams@vmware.com, and you can send me a note at any point. I also left a stack of my business cards up here if you want to communicate with me afterward. I'll hang around after the session, although I've got to go quickly to a VBC. But you can walk with me or grab one of my cards. All right, so let's look at what we're going to talk about today. Let me switch this up here. Here we go. So a little bit about launch context. Wanted to give you some clarity in there, as well as talk a little about the product set. We've made some recent changes to how we offer vSphere, and I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with those changes and that you understand the different options that you now have. In addition to that, we'll start with a quick recap of 5.1. How many people in this room already are on 5.1 today? Okay. How many people are got a version before 5.1 that's running, like 5 or 4? Okay, good. All right. So we'll talk about 5.1 just as a way to accelerate into 5.5. We'll talk about some of the new features around that. Again, my goal today is to give you the top, 10 to 15 things that we're doing. Okay, it's not to drill down into each one of these areas. We have many sessions that will drill down into AppHA or into Flash Read Cache, and feel free to go use those as a way to augment what you see today. But this is designed to be the larger overview so you understand, does 5.5 make sense for me now, or maybe it makes sense for me coming down the road? In fact, to get at that question, if we think about 5.5, how many people are doing testing with 5.5 right now? Okay. People that are already installed 5.5, having a 5.5 running version, go. And then how many people probably within the next 3 to 6 months are going to install 5.5? Okay, so a large majority. Okay, that's fairly consistent with what we usually see. I will tell you as well, we did some stats, some recent stats from our global support team. And we found that 5.5 actually has, in the beginning days here, we always track the number of bugs that come out right away and quick things we need to fix. And the number of calls that we've had actually on 5.5, way below with what we had with 5.1. And I think a lot of that has to do with the improvements that we made with the SSO functionality. So we'll talk about that as we go. All right, and then again, we'll do questions and answers at the end. Just because I have so much material to get through, need to save those to the end. And then we'll go ahead and have that Q&A session. So let's get started just at a high and quick level. We've been talking a lot about SDDC, the software-defined data center. This term is not going to go away. I know you guys, you don't necessarily like marketing material. We're here for technical information around 5.5, but just get used to seeing SDDC in the software-defined data center. We're going to be talking a lot about this. And obviously the vSphere layer fitting in here and making a lot of announcements this week, particularly around management, and then also with the NSX technology as well as the virtual SAN. So just keep in mind how this kind of fits into the overall picture. From my perspective, when you look at vSphere, it's the element that you need to get the SDDC started. And that's why it's a part of everything that we do. And in looking at that, one of the two ways we have for packaging up vSphere, you can get vSphere by itself, obviously, today. But there are two other ways to get vSphere. And I just want to make sure we're crystal clear on these. I'm not going to rant on and on about this, but two different ways we see people purchasing vSphere today. One is the operations management piece, the vSphere with operations management, where we've actually, starting in May or March of this year, we combine vSphere with vCOps in this special version of vSphere. And the design is that you get the vCOps capability around capacity, configuration details, the performance, health monitoring, that type of capability. Starting about 50 virtual machines, for any of you that are getting close to 50 or you're north of 50, it's really helpful to have those capacity and configuration and performance details, right? Imagine trying to fly a plane without a dashboard of instrumentation. Very difficult to do, okay? What also the vCOps integration with vSphere will help you do is to solve the problem around, is somebody using a VM? right? What do we do today when we think somebody's not using a VM? We turn it off and we wait for our phone to ring, right? So instead of doing that, you can actually use a more sophisticated methodology to understand what's going on. The other thing that people use VCOps for in a very big way, over-provisioned VMs. Okay? A lot of people do it. How many people have over-provisioned a VM before? Okay. Lots of people do it, right? You had 2 vCPUs, you could have gotten away with 1. This tool will help you go ahead and do that. We found that bigger customers, we have an airplane manufacturer in the United States. They put in the VCOps piece with vSphere. They found out that 90% of the VMs that were going out the door were over-provisioned. Okay? So that's a money waster. The other side, on the right side, the vCloud suite, obviously vSphere, a part of that as well. For those of you looking after private cloud or larger vSphere implementations, has the essential or the Enterprise Plus version of vSphere, and then adds a lot of additional functionality. So those acronyms may not make sense to you. We have the vCloud Director, the network and security piece, VCOps, and then also the Automation Center as well, the VCAC technology. And one of the things you probably see that's changed there, I'm not going to get into pricing and licensing here, but we've actually put VCAC across the board now on each version of the suite. So you have a lot of additional opportunity there to look at VCAC, whether it's part of standalone or part of the overall suite. So again, 2 particular ways to get vSphere today. You have the way you can just buy vSphere in and of itself, but as you're becoming a larger environment, either having the operations piece in conjunction with vSphere through what we call vSOM, or through the larger vCloud suite makes a whole lot of sense. And if you have questions about this, you can talk to me afterward as well. All right, I'm going to fly through this. So let's go ahead and look at 5.1 and where we've come from, just so we can understand where we're going. So when 5.1 came out, there were really 3 key focus areas, right? One of them was the web client, because that was in your face right away, right? That became the default interface into vSphere. Okay, that's a really key attribute. We had started to talk about the web client, and we said, okay, here it is in one of the previous versions, but we said, we still have the full-scale Windows client. Well, now, starting in the 5.1 release, the web client is the only full-functioning client. The Windows client doesn't have all the new capabilities that are part of it. So my plea to you, as you're moving toward 5.5, if you're moving toward 5.1, get to know the web client very well. We've updated it with 5.5. We've made it faster. It does run natively on Mac now. Also do have some new support for Chrome and some other of the browser interfaces, but get to know that pretty well. Also in 5.1, the introduction of vMotion that didn't require shared storage. So the ability for us to basically unify vMotion and storage vMotion together. That became a key piece. Now you could have 2 independent pieces of storage and be able to move the VMDK file as well as the VM container across the environment. So that's a key piece that was in here, in addition to the fact that we added replication for the first time into vSphere. So starting at 5.1, you can now leverage replication even if you don't have SRM, and even if you want to go ahead and just have movement of these VMs to this location. In addition to that, the other big difference maker, I think, in 5.1 was the advent of the larger distributed switch. So now the distributed switch has a backup and recovery capability for the configuration, which you can use as a template. You can also go ahead and patch the distributed switch, as well as supporting new things like LACP, which we didn't support before, as well as things like RSPAN and ERSPAN. We just had basic span support prior to that. So if you need additional details in 5.1, we've got those. Happy to talk about those at any other point. One last piece around 5.1 is we did also make larger VMs possible. And usually when we say, you can create a VM that's 64-way, 1 terabyte in RAM, the next words out of my mouth are usually, I don't know what you'd use a VM for that size of or for, but it's nice to know that you can do it. But the key characteristic, kind of all kidding aside, is that it's about being able to support mission-critical applications. So more and more people are virtualizing SAP, Oracle, SQL, Exchange in very big numbers, and we need to have that type of capability if the platform, is going to be something that you'll use 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. All right, so that's enough with 5.1. Let's get into 5.5. Okay, this is what we all came to talk about. Okay, so the big pieces are the pieces to the left. And what I'm going to do is I'll talk a little bit about them here, and we'll go through each one in kind of sequential detail. So first piece, performance and scale, adding new capabilities kind of across the board. In general, if you look at all the new specs in the configuration maximum document, most of them have gone up by a factor of 2. Okay, so most of the specs have gone up by 2x. All All right, and we'll talk about those. Probably the biggest performance and scale component that we've added is the 62 terabyte VMDK files. Okay, so that's a really significant piece. We had noted in some discussions that we had said 64. It's actually 62 due to some snapshot size pieces we need, and also due to some of the file system overhead. So just keep that in mind. It is 62 terabytes in terms of the limit. But that's probably the biggest piece of performance and scale. I'll show you the other pieces as well. When it comes to performance and scale, remember one of the things I always recommend people to have in addition to the release notes is to go get the configuration maximum document. Okay, that should be in your hip pocket so that you understand kind of where we are in terms of limits. Most of those are way beyond where you guys are at, but just keep those in mind. Okay, we're going to talk a little about AppHA and Flash Read Cache, supporting new mission critical applications. We'll get into some of the changes to replication as well as backup and recovery, and then get into a little bit around the big data extensions. How many people have, or let's say, have deployed Hadoop on top of vSphere? Anybody tried that yet? Okay. Anybody going to do that within the next 3 months? Okay. Anybody thinking about looking at putting Hadoop on vSphere? Okay, so a couple folks. All right, let's go ahead and look into each one of these. Oh, by the way, in terms of Hadoop, you're not alone with the U.S. counterparts that I've seen thus far. Most people, just getting into the phases of, possibly looking at running Hadoop on top of vSphere. So that's very similar feedback to what we had in the U.S. So basically, what I wanted to show you here in 2013, a lot of different things that are going on. So the top piece around Hadoop, big data extensions, an extension of the piece we called Project Serengeti. So basically what big data extensions do is it optimizes running your Hadoop distribution on top of vSphere. So it makes some configuration changes and actually allows you to have some different screens within vSphere to optimize what you're doing for the Hadoop distribution. And you can pick any distribution that you like. So you want to use Cloudera, you want to use MapR, you want to use Pivotal. You can go ahead and use any one of those distributions on top of vSphere. We support all of them. In addition to that, speaking of Pivotal, a little bit later here in the quarter, we're going to announce the availability of Pivotal CF on top of vSphere. Pat talked a little bit about this in the keynote yesterday. If any of you have application developers and you're looking to create platform as a service internally, so on your data center infrastructure, you can go ahead and do that. You'll put Pivotal CF in place. It uses an install process and gets you going with basically the ability to set up non-packaged applications. So if you want to develop apps or run an app in an environment, it will go ahead and do that. So be looking for that. I think many of you will come across that because your application developers will come to you and say, hey, I want to run this platform as a service capability on top of vSphere. So be on the lookout for that. I think you'll see a lot of folks going down that path very, very quickly. Also supporting some of the latest chipsets that are out there. So when these are available, pending announcement, we will go ahead and support those. One of the newer things that we're trying to do with vSphere development is support latest chipsets on day one. Normally we have like a 30 or 60 day kind of window where we try to support some of the newer chipsets. We're really trying to make an effort now to support them day one. So if you have cutting edge needs or you're in a beta cycle, you can go ahead and support those. The last piece is just a reminder, we're doing more and more work with vSphere in an OpenStack scenario. So keep in mind, if you're going to run OpenStack or looking at it, there is a hypervisor that needs to run for that installation. And the default hypervisor is actually KVM. Obviously, we think we have significant advantages over the KVM hypervisor. And so we just want to educate people on the ability to use OpenStack. Obviously, you can do that. And use vSphere as the underlying hypervisor as part of that. And we've got a lot more information in other sessions that talk about why we think we have an advantage there. But just some things to keep in mind for the overall release. Here's the larger performance numbers. So as I mentioned before, the 62 terabyte VMDK files, and then some other pieces I'm going to show you in just a second here. I will show you the configuration details. And I actually removed a slide here earlier. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But some of the configuration details, changing for 2x. One other piece too is if anybody has a low latency application. One of the things we've just recently done with vSphere is we've started to tune vSphere so it understands what a low latency application needs. And I'll show you that in just a second. Basically what we're doing is we can actually pin a vCPU to a physical CPU. Okay, and I'm going to talk more about this in just a second. But if you have a low latency app like an in-memory database, an aggressive stock trading application, for example, that needs some kind of additional capability and needs really snappy access, you can go ahead and use this low latency mode in the advanced settings for VMs. So let's look a little bit on the size. Here are some of the pieces in relation from 5.1 to 5.5. And this is a small segment, so definitely look through the release notes. But you see larger numbers of physical CPUs that we support, additional memory, up to 16 NUMA nodes, and then some additional vCPU sizes as well. Keep in mind that every single vSphere release, we usually take some piece and upgrade it in terms of scalability. In this particular case, it was 2x kind of across the board and not actually moving the size of the VMs themselves, but it's more about the infrastructure that we support. And a lot of this has to do with some of the newer chipsets that are coming out. So those new chipsets I showed you from Intel, we're having bigger boxes, bigger environments. We need to be able to support those larger infrastructure pieces. And I think this would also help for some of you that are thinking about planning, multi-years in the future. You want to know, how the versions are kind of stacking up against each other. All right. Here's the piece that I wanted to show you related to the low latency sensitivity. So this is in the advanced VM settings. And again, what you'll do is you'll go under here and you'll actually change the latency setting to high. It's kind of a weird thing. You're saying, okay, low latency, and I change the thing to high. But that's the way the methodology works. So you pull down the radio button, would select high, and then we'll go ahead and pin that vCPU to a physical CPU. Again, for in-memory database, aggressive trading applications, kind of those that have low latency needs. Definitely not for all your VMs, right? And when you do this, there are trade-offs in doing this. So if you pin to a physical CPU, obviously there are trade-offs. Could be performance impact on the machine, could be performance impact on the other VMs that are running there. Also keep in mind there are some recommendations around using things like network I/O control because of the NIC teaming and other things you need to consider. One other thing you may also consider is using the direct path capability, the direct I/O support that we have that goes and bypasses right to the virtual NIC or to the physical NIC itself. And there may be some reasons to go ahead and do that. That's all contained within the documentation that we have, but just keep in mind there are trade-offs when you go ahead and leverage something like this. But I think one of the good things about this is it shows a good trend on our part to try to understand more about applications, right? Because vSphere, when it has a VM, it doesn't know, necessarily that Oracle is running there versus nothing running on it, right? It doesn't have any awareness of specific applications until you tune it with limits and shares and some of those other pieces. This is getting more into, hey, I need to look at the application layer and say, okay, yes, I need this type of performance for this application, and do some differentiating between other VMs that are in the environment. Next piece, application HA. This is probably one of the most, I think, interesting parts of the 5.5 release and one of the bigger elements. So we all know HA. We've used HA for years, right? 80% of our base uses HA. But we were only looking after the VM itself. So when the application service died, whoops, there wasn't a great way to do that on our end, right? You may have used traditional clustering technology to go ahead and get at that. But now what we can do is, if we have a failure, either the OS, we can restart, the VM like normal on another host, or we can restart the service, the application service, or we could restart both. Depending on the severity of the crash and whatever happened, there may be reasons to do any of those three. This is using some of the Hyperic technology that we've had for some period of time. And because it uses Hyperic, it uses the same set of agents that we've used for Hyperic for years. So the compatibility for this, in terms of which Oracle, SAP, Exchange, and other apps we support, is based on that Hyperic agent. So when you go look on VMware.com, you'll look for the agent for HA, and you can look for your different application and see if it's certified for use. We have over 75 different commercial-grade application agents, so it's a high likelihood that the app that you want to put in app HA mode or the VM that is running that particular app will function in this environment. When you do set this up, it does require 2 virtual machines. You need to be running one that runs basically the app HA brain. The other runs some of the heartbeat type capabilities, and they work in combination to provide this app HA piece. If you get a chance, I'd definitely check this out in the hands-on labs. We are showing it as well at the booth. And then if you get a chance, if you run into one of our technical experts, there's a guy running around here. His name is Jeff Hunter. He's one of our experts around App HA, and he can talk your ear off on how this would actually work. One thing, too, on the licensing front, this is inside of Enterprise Plus. Okay, so if you don't have Enterprise Plus, you won't get App HA. Okay? So the other side to that is if you want App HA and you haven't been able to convince others that you should have Enterprise Plus, what I usually do is I would go get the eval, do a 60-day eval, show how App HA works to somebody higher up, and show the value there, and then you might be able to move up to Enterprise Plus. So just keep that in mind. I'll try to do that for each one of the features so that you know where these are. The performance and scale pieces that comes with all the versions of vSphere, so those are pretty straightforward. All right. That's enough about App HA. Here's the flash read cache capability. A lot of people have been running around. We used to call this vFlash, but that's no longer, so it's really called vSphere Flash Read Cache. This is also in Enterprise Plus only. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to accelerate the use of or the application performance anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times. And what it does is it infuses cache or flash into the data path. So the actual VM doesn't even know it's being accelerated by the flash read cache process. What you'll do is you'll create a flash pool. You can take any of the hosts that are in the vSphere cluster and create what's called a VFFS, a flash file system, or it's basically the fancy term for the pool that you'll create. And then I can go ahead and apply that to any of the VMs that are running in the environment. When you create that flash pool, again, you're taking all the flash from each of the hosts and aggregating that in. Keep in mind that when you do this, you can use this flash pool for the host to cache memory capability that we do offer, as well as this flash read cache process. Okay. Now, keep in mind too, when you create this flash pool, it is a separate flash pool from what you would use with virtual SAN. So if you try the virtual SAN public beta, the flash pool you create for that and this flash pool, they can't be used together. We'll probably do that at some point, but it's not available right now. So again, a great way of trying to speed up mission-critical applications. It will work with any generic flash that you have on the box. I don't think there's a significant compatibility piece there. I haven't looked at the compatibility list myself, but when I was talking to the engineers about it, they said any generic flash should go ahead and work for this process. Also remember, you're working on the read cache side, so the read operations will be accelerated. The write is actually done as a write I/O pass-through. We'll probably do a write cache capability at some point in the future, but for right now, focusing on the read cache functionality with this particular input. And keep in mind too, this is kind of signaling what we're trying to do around storage. So this piece for vSphere that's baked into the kernel, you have the virtual SAN. You saw Pat talk about things like the virtual volumes. There's a lot more to come when it comes to storage functionality. I'll also share with you at the end some of the other things that we've done around storage that are more tactical in nature. Here's the piece around big data extensions, or what we call BDE. When you run vSphere on top, or Hadoop on top of vSphere, we think there are some significant value props there. And not only the ability to run any of the distributions of Hadoop on top of vSphere, but more what you see down here, the ability to split up the compute and the storage VMs. So when you do Hadoop, there are some specific architectural needs that you'll have. And one of those is flexibility, right? You're crunching a lot of data around these analytics. And so having the compute layer and the storage layer from a VM perspective separated really helps us get a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more performance in terms of what we're doing. One of the other things that's nice about this is Hadoop does require you to be very flexible and agile in terms of spinning up configurations, spinning them down, suspending them, adding more. Those types of things are very well attuned to a vSphere environment. And then the last piece to convince you, why to run Hadoop on top of vSphere comes around the availability characteristics. So the Hadoop distribution does have capabilities for availability. We don't think they're as good, though, as what we offer with HA and with FT. So the ability to have high availability or fault tolerance for a Hadoop environment definitely sets you up better from an availability characteristic. So we're pretty excited about, the capabilities of running Hadoop on top of vSphere. This is also a big kind of trend setter for us in terms of trying to support not only the applications you have today, but the ones that you'll have tomorrow. So keep in mind, we're always trying to design vSphere so that if something new comes up, like a Hadoop, like Ruby on Rails, like something else, we'll be able to support that. And that's part of the changes that you saw in the low latency app stuff, as well as supporting things like OpenStack and a variety of other frameworks. We're really trying to span the globe when it comes to supporting different types of applications, and that's a real key for us as we think about doing this. All right. So vSphere replication, this remains intact for 5.5. Again, you can use this just with vSphere, or you can also have an integration with SRM. So depending on what you want to try to do. And what we've done with replication, added some additional enhancements to it. It's got multiple points in time copy capability. It also allows you to have a greater number of appliances that are in play. The number has gone up, I think, at least 2x in terms of the number of appliances that will support. And then the big one, being able to support the storage vMotion and storage DRS characteristics correctly. There were some issues before when storage DRS or storage vMotion were moving things around, and you went ahead and replicated. It has a much better capability in terms of integration points there. So keep that in mind. We haven't made any changes to the RPO, RTO characteristics, so it's still 15 minutes in terms of what I call the Wayback Machine. It still does 15-minute increments for replication. And for that reason, if you want to use this, you may use it with Tier 2, Tier 3, or Tier 4 class workloads. If you want something that's closer to minute access, you may need to look at a different replication component. All right. Here's the data protection piece. So again, still offering the VDP functionality. This was a new add-on in 5.1 based on the EMC Avamar technology. So what we've done here, added a few pieces. In addition to now at VMworld EMEA, we've now offered a new version of the Data Protection Advanced version. So let's first start with the base, and then we'll talk about the advanced version. So the base version of this included with all the versions of vSphere except for Essentials. So you have the ability to use this. It's great for pockets of environments, smaller sites, also a place where maybe you just don't have another backup license from your third-party vendor. You can go ahead and you set up the appliance, and then I can go ahead and back up at either the image or file level through that appliance. So what we've done in this release is we've now created the ability to do some better incremental capabilities. So granular backup, the individual VMDK backup and restore. So now we can do that with this functionality. We can also be able to do a direct recovery from the data store to the host itself. Should we lose vCenter server, or if we want to protect vCenter server. There were some issues around doing that in previous versions where if you lost vCenter server, you weren't able to facilitate a recovery. And now we don't have that particular limitation. The other one I think is a big deal is this one that's around detachable, remountable backup storage. So if you do a backup using this and you lose the virtual appliance that you see here, you actually don't need that same virtual appliance in order to facilitate a restore. Okay, so you could use another virtual appliance, another VDP appliance that sits somewhere in the environment to do the restore. And that's a powerful characteristic as well, just giving you some more granularity. Now, the VDP advanced capability that was mentioned in the keynote, it's a higher capability and higher functioning product than the baseline version that's in just the core 5.5 offering. So if you were to purchase VDP Advanced, you get additional number of terabytes in terms of capacity that we support. It was extending from 2 terabytes up to 8. I believe the new VDP-A goes up higher than that. You can also protect, as a result of that capacity, more VMs. Also in the VDP-A version, they have agents for SQL Server and also for Exchange. So if you're looking to back up either one of those, there are agents that have integration with the log capability as well as the data itself. So keep that in mind. But the VDP-A, the advanced technology, it is an add-on purchase that you can go ahead and grab. Also, for any of you that buy acceleration kits, the Enterprise and Enterprise Plus acceleration kits, the new ones that use vSOM, they also have the VDP Advanced as part of that acceleration kit. So if you're looking for that kind of quick setup of vSphere using the backup and recovery, you can look to the acceleration kits in order to go ahead and do that. Keep in mind, too, we still have the API structure, the traditional APIs for backup. So if you're using a third party for backup, you can continue to do that with version 5.5 as well. All right, some higher pieces related to vCenter Server. So the single sign-on capability, which didn't go so well with the 5.1 release, but got better, has gotten a lot better in version 5.5. So basically what we did is we went back to the engineering team and said, okay, we need to do something different here than the single sign-on that we had in 5.1, and that's what we did in 5.5. And so far, this has changed users' lives dramatically in terms of I didn't want to deploy 5.1 because of SSO, and now with 5.5, the newer SSO version that we have, a lot stronger, a lot more simplified, and better integration with things like Active Directory. Better use of and the setup of the back-end database. It also supports things like forest mode that it didn't support before with Active Directory. All these different little things that amounted to a big thing with SSO have definitely been fixed and addressed with 5.1. Or excuse me, 5.5. The other piece too is the appliance. So the vCenter Server appliance, we've finally added some scalability to that. We did change the underlying database to a Postgres environment. And what it will do, I left out the numbers there, but I got some new numbers recently. It will support an environment with up to 100 hosts, and I believe it was 3,000 virtual machines. So in the previous version in 5.1, when we talked about the embedded database, we talked about 5 hosts and up to 50 VMs. That's not very helpful, probably most of your environments, right? So now this is really becoming a better option for deploying vCenter Server. So keep that in mind. Check the numbers in the configuration max document. That has the official numbers, but I believe it's 100 hosts with up to 3,000 VMs. But check those numbers to see what the true piece is. So keep that in mind. And then also related to what we're doing, the interface itself. So the web client has been improved in terms of speed, the ability to now have the Mac capability, so run natively on the Mac, which we didn't have before. And then you see some other pieces around being able to deploy OVF files, the drag and drop functionality, filters, recent items folder, all of that. And again, this is now the default platform for vSphere, or excuse me, the default interface for vSphere. And keep in mind, I would imagine that the next time that I come to talk to you, maybe next year or whenever the next major version of vSphere, whenever it should come out, will not most likely have the Windows GUI any longer, right? So you'll just have the web client, all right? And we've talked about that over the last few years, and it's been similar to when we moved from ESX to ESXi. But I'm pretty sure that the next time I come to talk to you, the Windows GUI will not be available any longer. So keep that in mind. And as a result of that, we're doing things, around Update Manager and other pieces to make sure that they, fully function in the web client environment, and you can do everything that you need to do, as well as get the performance that you need. Here's the kind of best of the rest features. There's not a great way to do this, so every year I always kind of make a joke around this. But, the idea is that, on the platform and the storage and network side, any new release of vSphere usually has well over 100 new features, okay? So these are some of the best of the rest capabilities. I'll just draw your attention to a few of these. Underneath the platform, there's one up there that says reliable memory. That will actually be talked about more as some of our partners come out with functionality that supports that. Basically what it will be is an ability to mirror memory. We'll have a region of memory that the hardware tells vSphere is reliable. And for that region, what we'll do is we can put the hypervisor into that region of memory. And by doing that, we have better availability for the hypervisor because the hypervisor will be mirrored to another section of memory. So even more redundancy for things like the hypervisor and other types of capabilities using this reliable memory. So there'll be more announcements around that from some of our partners as we go forward. You see some other pieces. Some of you, I know, often talk to me about graphics processors or GPUs. So some greater support there for GPUs and some of the other variations around GPUs as well. On the storage side, a lot of these in terms of the compatibility modes and then the 64 terabyte VMDK files. So some things that we're doing there in making storage better. As well as on the network side, some additions to the LAC piece of the link aggregation control protocol up the top. As well as a few other types of capabilities. Also, down here you see a 40 gig support. So 40 gigabit capability should help us in terms of performance on the network side. Any folks using 40 gigabit NICs today? In terms of the network? No? Okay. Interesting. All right. All right, so we've talked a lot about the functionality. Let's talk a little bit about some announcements and reminders too with relation to 5.5. So I want to talk just for a second around pricing and licensing just for a second so we can see the chart that tells us where these different features are, because I actually didn't mention in the big data extensions and the reliable memory where those are, so we can talk about that. I want to make a point about 5.5 lifecycle in terms of the number of years it's supported, since we're making a change there, and the change is going to be better for you, trust me. And then also want to talk a little bit about vCloud Director as the, we're going to make some changes to the roadmap for that. And because of those changes, we're actually going to move some technology most likely into vSphere that was formerly part of vCloud Director. So again, I think a win-win in your scenario, as there are some functionalities that are in VCD today that need to be part of kind of the base virtualization admin's kind of toolkit. And we'll talk about those. And then just a quick commercial at the end for the SUSE license that comes along with your purchase of vSphere. Okay, so here's the chart that you need. This is the big one that usually comes out. We also have this in a table form up on VMware.com. If you go up on VMware.com and go under vSphere, there's a button that says Compare Kit or Compare Edition. That's the most utilized page on the VMware website for vSphere. And what you'll see here is, here are the additional capabilities. These are each of the versions of vSphere. So you got Standard, Enterprise, and Enterprise Plus. You can see here big data extensions and reliable memory started at Enterprise and higher. And then, as I mentioned before, Flash, Read Cache, and AppHA, those are added to the Enterprise Plus. If you have the vCloud Suite, that already has Enterprise Plus in it, so you have all this stuff on the right. And then also the vSphere with Operations Management, we've got versions of those, Standard, Enterprise, and Enterprise Plus, and it follows this path as well. Those prices would be a little bit higher for the vSOM characteristic because it has Operations Management built into it. Everything else in this list you should be familiar with already. That's stuff that you already utilize probably today. But just in case, you know, one of the things I often see with a lot of vSphere users, they don't recognize all the functionality that they could go ahead and leverage. So definitely take a look. You know, this is the time to go ahead and do that when you look at these types of charts. You know, do I know what these things are? And then B, do I know, you know, how they could help me? And one of the ways to learn about that, go to that Compare tab that I was talking about before on the vSphere site. And actually, we have a scroll capability where you can hover over each one of these, and it will tell you exactly what that piece of functionality does. So if you don't know some of those, please use that site on the website to go ahead and understand and see, geez, does this make, you know, sense for my business in terms of what we're trying to do? All right. Here's the big one related to 5.5, okay, for support capabilities. So, the Support Lifecycle, the official document at VMware says major versions are supported for 5 years, and then there's a 2-year kind of you know, call us type of capability. Okay, and it also says that any minor version after that major is supported for the lifecycle of that 5 years that's set up by the main release or the 5 release. So to translate that, the vSphere 5 release came out in the 2011 time, right? So normally, 5.1 and 5.5 would only have the remaining time left on the clock, right? So vSphere 5 comes out 2011 and will be officially supported to 2016, okay? So in doing that, what ends up happening is the minor release gets a smaller amount of years of support, okay? So in this case, with 5.5 coming out and being a minor, it would only have 2 to 3 years of support because it's following the 5 path. So what we've decided to do is give 5.5 a full 5-year life cycle. So it will be supported until 2018. Okay, so we're extending the support of this particular version. The reason that I tell you this is because, geez, if I'd only told you it was 2 or 3 years or we had stuck to the original policy, it's probably not very high likelihood that you would have adopted 5.5. So that's why we've actually extended the support for another several years for vSphere 5.5. Okay. And that is actually officially listed. If you want the official date, there is a site on the website. It says end of life compatibility matrix. Very easy to follow. You can actually use it for all products within the VMware portfolio. Also keep in mind for those people who raise their hand on 4.x, 4.x support officially ends in May of next year. So keep that in mind as well. All right. let's talk a little bit about vCloud Director and where it's going and how it's going to impact vSphere. Okay? And what I want to first tell you is that this is actually going to be over a longer period of time. It's not actually right now. It's going to happen over the next couple of releases. So that's important to realize. As I mentioned before, we've decided to take a little bit different view into how we deliver this type of technology. So what we're going to do with vCloud Director is we're having our 5.5 release. That's already out. We've made that announcement, and we'll support that for a 5-year term. We've actually extended support for vCloud Director 5.5 beyond its normal life cycle so that you can go through this transition or it becomes easier. And what we're going to do is we're going to push some functionality up into VCAC. We'll push other functionality down into vSphere. Okay? One of the reasons behind that we're doing this, and this is more aimed at enterprise customers rather than service providers, the vCloud Director technology worked very, very well in the service provider market, and we'll continue to offer that in our VSPP program and to service providers. But vCloud Director, its construct, didn't work as well in the enterprise. We think the model that we have with VCAC works a lot better. So if you've looked at vCloud Director before, time to start looking at vCAC, because that's going to be the better methodology for lifecycle and creation of VMs and provisioning. We also obviously announced the 6.0 version this week that now puts together the App Director technology with vCAC. Now when we look at this, basically what this will mean is we push some functionality we think all administrators should have down, and I'll share with you what that is, into vSphere. And then we push some of the pieces up in the top into VCAC to make that a more well-rounded self-service delivery mechanism. And look at that cloud automation that we keep talking about. So specifically, and this may vary, roadmaps always change, so don't take this as gospel. But this is the idea that we have around what we want to move up and what we want to move down. Okay? So in terms of the move down into vSphere, we're going to, over time, put things like the content catalog that was part of VCD into vSphere. Things like the vApp will go ahead and be broadened inside of vSphere. Pieces like the virtual data center, the VDC, that will be brought into vSphere as well. Basically what we're trying to do is add a lot of elements that, again, I think all virtual admins need to go ahead and keep in mind. The other one that's going to be really cool when we get there, this idea of intelligent placement. One of the cool things vSphere is going to do in combination with some other products in the future is literally you're going to be able to say, vSphere, here's the workload I want to run. Let's say it's Exchange or SQL. And I'm going to write basically a barcode related to that. Probably in the vApp, you'll just tell it some information about what this application is like or what you want it to do. And vSphere, along with all the other products, will actually set up the configuration. From the CPU to the memory to the storage to the network, all those different components, it'll set up all of that for you and place the workload correctly into the environment. So I realize that's probably a little, you may think it's like smoke and mirrors now, but I've seen some of this working in the lab, and it's pretty interesting how we're doing some of that intelligent placement. So think about it like DRS on steroids. That type of capability is really what we're shooting for. All right. Last couple of things just to mention. Do keep in mind that you do have the ability to grab a SUSE Linux license with every copy of vSphere that you have. A lot of people don't really remember this. So when you have a vSphere license, any of the licenses that we sell, we do offer a free SUSE Linux license with that. You can buy extra support on top of that from SUSE themselves. But just keep this in mind because you can go ahead and get started with a Linux VM right away with your vSphere purchase. So I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind. There's plenty of other detail up on the website about this as well. I know we may be a different variants of Linux here, but keep this in mind. All right, last couple of things. Big thing up on the web, the Upgrade Center is still there. So we do on the vSphere page, you actually just go to VMware.com, and I had trouble finding this the other day. If you just type in Upgrade Center into the search field, you'll get this document, which will help you plan your upgrade up to 5.5. Keep in mind, the biggest thing just to watch out for is the SSO capability. You're going to want to watch that. And remember, in SSO, when you set it up, one of the biggest and easiest ways to make sure that all goes well, choose the automated installation with SSO. People got into problems when they did the manual configuration of SSO, and they didn't actually do SSO configuration first. And then all sorts of other bad things happen, right? They were checking certificates and all sorts of weird and funky things happen. So I would recommend using the automated install of SSO if you haven't done so and haven't moved to 5.5 already. And we talk about that up here on the website. We've got also other information that's more tech heavy on how to actually do an installation. Installation pretty similar to 5.1 and should roughly take, I would say, half a day to a day in terms of the setup and planning. In terms of what's going on, just so you can have a good expectation. I think one of the other things, too, just longer term, for 5.5 and some of the other technologies, we're actually now doing the hands-on labs beyond VMworld. We have those available. It's in a beta process today, and then we'll go GA a little bit further. But the hands-on labs would now allow you to test a 5.5 environment prior to actually setting it up in your own environment. So you can go through a portal in the hands-on lab just like you do here at VMworld, but at some other time, and you could kick the tires on all the 5.5 functionality. So I think that that's a really important piece to recognize. All right. Well, with that, what I'm going to do is I will stick around for questions and answers, and you can stick around for them too. We'll bring up the mic. But for those of you who want to leave, thank you very much for attending the session. Thank you. All right, do we have questions in the audience? Yes, sir.
What about the upgrade path from the existing vSphere customers to the vCOps suite and
Sure.
vCloud suite?
Yeah, so the upgrade path in those particular cases would be mostly around the license component. So we do have a license, an upgrade license that you would purchase in order to go from vSphere, let's say Enterprise Plus, up to either vSOM or the vCloud suite. So we do have a license transition, and basically what it is, it's the delta cost between what you paid for Enterprise Plus and whatever the version is that you're going to. So that would allow you to go ahead and upgrade to that. Oh, one thing I didn't mention too in the roadmap piece of just vSphere and also in 5.5, I'm sure somebody will ask this. We do not have multi-CPU for fault tolerance just yet. It's still not in the product, so it's still one vCPU with 5.5. It hasn't changed to two-way or four-way. I hope the next time I come talk to you, I don't have to say that again, but that's the way it is right now for FT.
Which browsers is the web client supported on?
It's supported on IE, Firefox, Google Chrome, and I believe we do now have support for Safari as well. And check the versions on the website. Other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you very much. I will stay here. I've got my business cards up front, but enjoy the rest of VMworld 2013. Thank you.